President Barroso has very kindly agreed for 10 minutes or so to take some questions. Can I ask you, as academics, to ask questions on the understanding that President Barroso is a political scientist and not a technical economist, although, as you know and saw, he can speak very clearly on economic issues. Also, can I ask you, friends and members of the press who are very welcome here, to keep your questions for the opportunity with the press that President Barroso has kindly offered after this conference. So I'm asking for questions from the academic brothers and sisters here rather than from the press. I'm also going to take, because it'd be nice to get 2 rounds of 3 questions in, we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to take the questions like that in groups of 3. So I've been speaking long enough for you to formulate all your questions. Could you say who you are and where you're from, please? Are there roving mics here? Here comes Tim.
Tim Besley from the LSE. I'd like to pick up on one of the points you made right at the end on the challenge for Europe, and to ask you if you think there's a specific institutional change that you think is needed in Europe in response to the crisis, other ways of strengthening European institutions that have been manifest during the crisis.
First of all, I think yes, we need some institutional changes to approve the Lisbon Treaty, first of all. We have been discussing institutional change for I don't know how many years, so I hope that now we have the Lisbon Treaty approved after the vote in Ireland, and so that we have clarity about the institution. Because frankly, I think that now we need to concentrate more on policies and concrete results for citizens than to be all the time discussing about institutions. With all respect for institutions, I'm myself sharing a very important European institution. But at the economic level, yes, we may make some changes. And in fact, we have been proposing recently, based on a report I have commissioned to this high-level group shared by Monsieur de la Rosière, we have come with some proposals that were endorsed in the last European Council about some, let's say, institutional changes for financial regulation at European level. This is the kind of thing I believe can be instrumental to achieve a more European dimension. But my point is the following. I don't think it will be now great and a very practical suggestion to start again a discussion about the overall architecture of the European Union. Let's try to get the Lisbon Treaty approved. It gives us some more coherence, hopefully, in terms of the external action, namely, where we can, it makes the decision-making simpler in terms of the generalization of vote by majority and not unanimity. So it's a good treaty, far from perfect, but it's a very good treaty in terms of the simplification of decision-making. But on economic terms, I think these are the most important issues that we can do and should do on financial regulation and financial supervision, like proposals we have made, and they were broadly received. There are other issues where we can, in fact, change the behavior of institutions without a reform of a formal reform of the institution or a legal. Yes, you can do actually. And some of those proposals I will go to make them in the next weeks, in fact. I'm working on it now. I have also, as a matter of courtesy, to present them to the European Parliament. But I think some of them are important because they depend more on the culture of the cooperation between European institutions than on, let's say, legal revolutions or even legal reforms. But this is an important issue that I believe we can introduce some. I just mentioned one, for instance, the surveillance under the Stability and Growth Pact. We can perfectly well, with the current Stability and Growth Pact, without changing the treaties, though I'm not proposing a new treaty now, we can perfectly well use the flexibility and improve on the culture of this implementation.
Bernardo Bortolotti from University of Turin and Fondazione Enrico Muttei. You mentioned a very interesting figure. If I got it correctly, you mentioned 3-point-something trillion euros of action, of government action in various forms, ranging from recaps, recapitalization, liquidity injection, and so on. So I was just wondering whether you think that a part of this money went into recapitalization and state acquisitions. So do you think, are you somehow worried about this kind of resurgence of state capitalism in Europe, or you see it just as a temporary phenomenon?
Second one in this round is
Aldo Carreras, UPF from Barcelona GSE. Well, as a meeting of economists, one of the quintessential economic institutions that are European and economic in purpose is the European Central Bank. How do you see the health of the euro now, 10 years later? Now we have had that asymmetric set of shocks that we were a bit worried about at the start. How do you think things will come out? With somebody, some currencies opting out or others opting in?
Thank you, Albert. Actually, I had a question, if I may. The unemployment in Europe will go on rising, and the pressures for protectionism will start getting still stronger. They're quite strong now. I wondered if you could share some of your thoughts on how Europe could best lead that battle against protectionism, because you articulated so clearly and convincingly why openness is so important. So how can we protect against protectionism, if I could put it that way?
Okay, very important and substantive question. Thank you. First of all, regarding the figures, I can repeat them. We have to make a distinction between what was already committed, what was already authorized, and what was already implemented. So, since October 2008, the Commission has approved of a total of 3.6 trillion euros of state aid measures, financial institutions. That is more or less 30.5% of GDP, at least. I decided to mention this figure precisely because very often people say that Europe has not done enough. Come on. This is what, isn't it? By any standards. It is completely, as we have said now, this is the most used adjective, unprecedented. Completely unprecedented. This time. If you ask anyone in Brussels or outside of Brussels, 2 years ago, will the Commission ever accept state aid measures of 30% of GDP for one sector? People say, are you dreaming or are you crazy? And that was authorized already by the European Commission. State aid, and state aid is a European policy, the European instrument. But so far, only, if I may say so, 1.5 trillion have been effectively used under the different headings of the instruments we have. So, debt guarantees, recapitalization, liquidity support, and treatment of impaired assets. Anyway, this is 12.6% of GDP. We believe more than that could be still used. And this has been done in a way that was relatively coordinated. Of course, you said this point as well, United States, they are one country. We are 27 countries. Let's not forget, with 28 central banks. The central banks of each of our countries, plus the European Central Bank. And the fact that in such a short period, we were able to issue guidelines for this kind of action.